Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Calvary. You know, I always like to say, how are we all doing today? You know what I wish sometimes, when I say how are we doing, I wish that we could actually stop and, like, for the service, we just talk to each other and actually find out how we're doing, right? Whatever our concept, because I would like to be able to stop. You know, I don't ever get a chance to, I get a chance to do that some, but I just had a chance finally this morning to find out, Kay and I had a chance to find out how we were doing. It's actually kind of novel, isn't it? It really is. You come to church, how we do it. It's so important. But welcome this morning. Just a couple of announcements to keep us keep us all legal, right? I don't know what that means, but women's Bible study. I think they're on chapter 8. I lose track. I'm not allowed to the woman. It's a women's Bible study. I'm not allowed in. So I think they're going to be Tuesday night at 7 a.m. If please, 7 p.m., a.m. My wife corrects me. That's why she looks at my messages. Anything that's not right means it's a leftover from me. But so downstairs there's some action happening, okay? One of the classrooms, okay? Keely and Hannah started painting, so that's what the room looked like. This is what it looks like when it's had all the dark color all covered over. And if you want to go see what it looks like now, you have to go downstairs. But they were down there. Keely was down there on her hands and knees painting away, and Hannah was up on a ladder painting away. A lot's happening down there. Rumor has it there's going to be a big mural up on the wall, and it's going to be beautiful, right? Right, it is. Of course it's going to be beautiful. So that's happening downstairs for the children down there for their class. Start to step things up a little bit. I'm pretty excited about that. Oh, yeah, the bunny thing. So we're going to do an Easter breakfast, okay? So Easter Sunday, which is that 2 weeks? Yep. Thank you. But we're going to have breakfast. So we've got a menu out. So I've talked to some of the folks about planning and doing the cooking and stuff. If you weren't part of that, you'd like to be part of it, please do. It takes a lot of work to get it set up, but it's a lot of fun. We have some fellowship. We have food. It's all before service, and then we have a service, okay? And the last thing I think I have here is lights, action, camera. So Chantel is going to be some filming today, okay? Remember that little clip I showed you, My Church? Well, she's going to start asking some questions and based on little clips of us, okay? It'll take a while to do this. It just does, My church is this, my church is that. So she's going to be asking some of you, and if you want to do it, please help her out and step forward, okay? She'll appreciate that. She doesn't want to have to twist anyone's arm, but I've given her permission to do that, okay? So please, we're going to be doing that after service, but now what we're going to be doing is we're going to sing praises to God. Please stand, please join us. Please join us as we open in song.
Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. We're all together lovely, all together worthy, all together wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, cost to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. This second song is a mixture of a hymn and a new song. This is the first time to sing this as a congregation. I pray that we all remember God's promises. Not everything in life is all roses and candies and Easter bunnies. And we know that we also have to remember that although we have troubles in this world, God has promised that He will come back again. Amen. One day you'll make everything new, Jesus. One day you will bind every wound. The former things shall all pass away, no more tears. One day you'll make sense of it all, Jesus. One day every question resolved, every anxious thought left behind, no more fears. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. One day we will see face to face Jesus. Is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed on that day. And one day we will free indeed, Jesus. One day all this struggle will cease, and we will see your glory revealed on that day. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, face to face. Jesus, is there a greater vision of grace? And in a moment we shall be changed. Yes, in a moment we shall be changed. In a moment we shall be changed on that day. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. We'll sing and shout the victory.
Amen. Thank you so much. Hey, folks, when you sing that song, when we all get to heaven, as just a hymn straight up, when you get to that shout part, that's when, like, in a congregation, they all go, shout! And everyone gets crazy doing that when you do it straight hymn. Have you ever been in a church like that, which I have for many years? It's kind of fun to yell in church, just is. But I'm glad you're all here, folks. I'm going to want you to say hi to each other, but I want you to think about this. This is a radical thought. Just think about next week if you sat someplace else rather than you usually do. I want you to, I can turn my back on you, and I know where everyone's seated right now. I know where you're at. I know. I see you there, Meredith, okay? It's no problem. I know you're all at. So just think about this. Just messing me up altogether. Sit someplace else. Mix it up. But have a seat. Anyways, I'm glad that you're here. We're creatures of habits. Oh, junior church is going down. They're going to have some fun. All righty. They love it when Carrie's on there teaching. They know they're going to get goodies. She's like me. You just bribe them. Just bribe them straight up. That's okay. So, He made a man whole. Titled this message, He made a man whole today. And by implication, that means that the man was broken, right? He made a man whole. He might have been broken first. And, I put this message together, and, you study things, you go through it. Then this morning, I'm just going through, and I'm just contemplating, thinking of things. And I thought about how many broken people I know right now, both physically and spiritually. I got to tell you what, my chest got really heavy. My chest is, I'm up here now, just so you know. I feel like there's an elephant on my chest, because I just started thinking about it, how broken we can be. This isn't even like the main part of the message, but it is. But it just got me. It's important that it is there. So we get into this message. A few things we need to understand as we get into this message. We need to understand what went on earlier in chapter 5 in John chapter 5. Okay, it's important for us to understand, because Jesus had some interactions with their religious hierarchy. We have to study the whole Word of God. We do. Sometimes you get a person, and, I love them, but they'll say, I just base my entire faith on this verse, bless God and everything. It's like, well, that's good, but God gave us the whole Word of God, okay? So, and He gave us your faith too. Use the whole Word. Get it all in there, because, you might be a little bit more to learn than just that one verse in your life. But if you recall back in chapter 5, it was months ago, I get it. But Jesus healed a man by the pool of Bethesda outside the gates in Jerusalem. Okay, He healed this man. He'd been infirm for 38 years. And that shouldn't be a problem, all right? Except He did it on the Sabbath. That was a problem. So as we get to our text today, okay, Jesus is going to travel from Galilee down to Jerusalem. And I know I said last week, you recall, He said He wasn't going to go there. He goes there. Imagine that, I guess. But the healing was done on the Sabbath. And that act of healing on the Sabbath that really precipitated the religious leaders taking issue with Jesus, desiring to take His life. And it's played out in John chapter 7. But let me read through the text. So we're in John chapter 7. We're going to look at verses 10 to 23. Look at it on your phone, on your Bible. If you want to read along, or you can just listen to my melodic voice that's anything but melodic. In John chapter 7, verse 10. But when his brothers had gone up, he also went up to the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, "Where is he?" And there was much complaining among the people concerning him. Some said, "He is good." Others said, "No, on the contrary, he deceives the people." However, no one spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews. So there's a lot of fear and trepidation at this feast. Now, about the middle of the feast, Jesus went up to the temple and he taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, "How does this man know letters, having never studied?" Jesus answered them and said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know concerning the doctrine, whether it is from God or whether I speak of my own authority. He who speaks for himself seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law? Let none of you keep it. Why do you seek to kill me? Why do you seek to kill me?" He just puts the question to him. The people answered and said, "You have a demon. Who's seeking to kill you?" Jesus answered and said to them, "I did one work, and you all marveled. Moses therefore gave you circumcision, that not from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a man completely well on the Sabbath?" It's quite a contrast, isn't it? Quite a contrast. He made a man whole on the Sabbath. Let's have a word of prayer. Let's get into this. Lord, I do thank you. I thank you for this day, Lord. I thank you for this message. We are a broken people, Lord. All of us, one way or another, and we need to be made whole. It's only through you, Lord. It's only through you. I thank you for the opportunity to bring forth this message. And I pray, Lord, that people's hearts will be open to it, and someone here today will be blessed by your word. I thank you and praise you, Jesus. Amen. So previously, Jesus, remember, he had spoken with his brothers. He said, "I'm not going down to Judah, okay? I'm not going to go there to the Feast of the Tabernacle, all right? He's not going to go there. You can go if you want, but if I go there, they're going to murder me." That's what he said. They're going to murder me. They're going to kill me. See, when you insert the word murder instead of kill, it takes on a whole different context, doesn't it? It's important, okay? If I go out after service and I get hit by a car on Dedham Street and get killed, that's an accident. It's not an injustice. It's bad, but it doesn't sound so horrible. However, if there's a plan, a premeditated plan to kill me, all right, plan to take me out, okay, that's really nefarious, isn't it? It brings a whole new context. What it's not just going to kill me, you're going to murder me then. It's a different thing. When someone murders someone, when that plan is done, the perpetrators thought this through in their mind over and over. People just don't murder people haphazardly. No, this is planned out in a person's mind. Think about it sometimes. It's really there. Plotting my death. They're plotting Jesus' death. That's what he's getting across to his brothers. They didn't understand that. Not at all. Why? Well, because he healed on the Sabbath. That's what he had done. So, Jesus, he made the trip after all, folks. He did make the trip. Remember, he's up here around Capernaum in Galilee, and there's two paths you could take if you're going to go down to any place. The common path was to go down the east side of the Jordan River, avoid going to Samaria at all, because the Jews hated the Samaritans. It's the way it was. Not right, doesn't make any difference. But I imagine Jesus did what Jesus does. He probably traveled this little approximately 90-mile trek down to Jerusalem. You know, and it's no big deal, right? 90 miles. Just think of it, though. When he went, the roads were clear. You know what happens like on game day, right? If you go down 95 on game day near Gillette, have you ever made that mistake? The roads, it's insane. You can't get through. And it's even worse when the game's over, because there's all those same people, and they may have been drinking. I'm not quite sure. But they may have been drinking a little bit, and that's what happens, even worse. Halftime's not so bad. But when Jesus traveled down there, I think it was pretty clear sailing for him at that time. That's what he did. And he got there, and he winds up at the temple after all, doesn't he? He shows up. He says, I'm not going there, but he does go there. He does go there. In the middle of the feast, maybe day 4, right? It was 7 days plus one more 8. That's what the Feast of Tabernacle is all about. He showed up fashionably late. He wasn't trying to keep people in suspense, though. But oddly enough, there were people waiting for Jesus to show up, right? He wasn't trying to fashionably late. Yep. Some came to hear what he had to say. Others were to ensure that Jesus wouldn't say anything anymore. They wanted to shut him up. That's what they want to do. But he was center stage to the temple. I was just trying to think of this. You know, that's like one of replicas. It's like, was he like up at this, like a high spot like this, and they're just like banging it out, telling people? How bold is that? How bold is that? It's so bold that they didn't even react. They couldn't even react. They were sort of like, what's this guy thinking? Doesn't he know we're going to kill him? And he just stands up and he does his thing. It's an amazing thing when you think of it. They got the truth that day. And sometimes for us, it's really hard to handle the truth, isn't it? Isn't the truth hard sometimes? It just is. But some people, they said about Jesus, some said he's bad. Others said he's good. We do the same thing today, don't we? Yeah, we do. We can form opinions on people based on a few words we hear from someone else about a person. Doesn't it happen all the time? That person did X, Y, and Z. Oh yeah, right? Or by appearance, clearly by appearance, right? I mean, I'm definitely holy today. As you know, I got the holy tie on. But by appearance, we can do this whole appearance thing, can't we? And let's not leave out social media. Please, let's leave social media out. Everyone just one post away from being trashed, right? That's what happens. It's amazing how we form our opinions about people. Some said he was good. Some said, not so much. That's what was happening. But he shows up at the temple, and the people are amazed at what he's teaching. That's what he says. The Jews marveled, saying, how does this man know letters, having never studied? Right? They're looking at this guy. He's from the outback. He's from Galilee. See, if you lived down in Jerusalem, you thought you were better than the people in Galilee. You know how we do that sometimes? We're better than those people that live over there. Isn't it just the dumbest thing we do sometimes? It really is. But we do it. We do it. Yeah. But there's a huge cultural issue where you were from. And things don't change, right? You ever hear people say, well, what are your credentials to be saying whatever you're saying? By what authority can you talk about whatever it is? It's a strange thing, but it happens more and more nowadays. It is. And, you know, I love education, right? I love education, but education has become a temple that people worship at, right? Isn't it? I love it. Look, I like to go back and get a whole bunch of history classes and other. So it's a funny thing about my education. You know, I got my undergraduate degree, and then I started taking all the hardest graduate chemistry classes there were. And people said, what degree you're going to get? I go, I like chemistry. I'm taking the classes. But you're taking advanced organic chemistry. Yeah, I took them all. It was fun. Because I wasn't looking at it to get and there's nothing wrong with getting a degree, but it was just my mindset at the time. I just wanted to take the classes. I was having a good time, right? But we've really made this whole education into a temple of worship. It's a very expensive one too, right? Your offering's got to be really big to get into these universities now. It's crazy, right? It's crazy the amount of money. Think about it. This is a real temple situation here. It's all right. And you have to be at the right place too to be taught by the right person, right? Yeah, you do. How often do people just simply go to college to, I want to go to this college because it does X, Y, and Z, which is good. Because usually what people have to do now is say, well, I go to this college because it won't cost this much. This is kind of a silly thing. And there's a great disparity. And I'm not going to go off on colleges. It's just something to think of about how we go through and we revere certain situations in life. We do. But Jesus, he sort of starts to clear things up a little bit. Jesus answered in verse 16, he said to them, my doctrine is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know concerning the doctrine, whether it is from God or whether I speak of my own authority. People love to speak from their own authority. But he who speaks for himself speaks to his own glory. But he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Trying to do God's work, say his words. Did not Moses give you the law? Let none of you keep the law. Wow. Think of that. None of you keep, he's saying this to the religious leaders. And then he finishes up, and then he says, and why do you want to kill me? I mean, like face to face, right? I said to you, go, what do you want to kill me for? They might have been really close. What do you want to kill me for? Put yourself in a situation. What do you want to kill me for? Scary situation, too, if you think about it. See, but Jesus' message was very disarming to those that wanted to shut him up. It really was. My teaching's not mine. What I'm teaching is from my Father. Right? There's sort of a real change up on that. It really is, if you think about it. See, at this time, once again, it was very important who your rabbi was, who was teaching you, who your mentor was. Okay, it is. Who taught you? Who taught you? It wasn't about what he knew. It's about who taught you. Did you catch that? Who was your teacher? Well, you know this stuff. I mean, I know stuff. Turns out I have a library. I love the library, folks. I love going to the library. I get books from the library. I read. The library's a great place. Use it sometimes. You pay for it in your taxes. But at any rate, it wasn't about what he knew. See, this is the crux of the disagreement with Jesus and the contempt for Jesus. And it extends back to chapter 5. This is where the real problem gets to. The time Jesus healed this man at the pool of Bethsaida, he healed the infirm man on the Sabbath. A good work on a Sabbath. How dare you? How dare you? Because Jesus healed on a Sabbath. For this reason, the Jews persecuted Jesus and sought to kill him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath. It's simple. It's crystal clear, isn't it? But his discourse was so disarming to them. He states that his teachings are not his, but they're of God, right? This is God's teaching. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know concerning the doctrine, whether it is from God or whether I speak of my own authority. Think about this. If your will is to do God's will, you'll know when a teaching is of God. Did you catch that? If your will is God's will, you know if a teaching is God. Why is that important? Ask this question. What's my will? Ask this question. Is what I'm teaching right now correct? It's a funny thing, isn't it? You came here. People might even listen to it on YouTube, right? Is what I'm teaching correct? Because you will not be able to discern that unless your will is God's will. At least that's what Jesus just said. That's not what Pete said. That's what Jesus just said. Where's our will at? Because you have to be careful that what I teach is true. That's very, very important. It really is. And it mattered who your teacher was. It was a matter of prestige that was coming through here. Sound familiar? It really does. Oh, you don't understand. I went to Oxford. I'm an Oxford grad, right? Something like that. People would feel like that. And if you heard that, right, you might not know anything about Oxford, but you think, well, that sounds cool because it's Oxford. Give me a break. Really. What do you know? And it's not that we have to go through and discern what someone knows either. But the Apostle Paul used this same who was he taught by himself. When the Apostle Paul was brought before the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem in Acts, he did the same thing, you know. He was a smart guy. In Acts 22 and verse 3, he says, I am indeed a Jew, born of Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up at the feet of Gamaliel, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous towards God as you are today. Talk about name dropping. Well, that's what Paul did. He's before the Sanhedrin, right? He says, I was taught by Gamaliel, guys. Gamaliel was the Pharisee of Pharisees. He was the teacher, man. He was the man you wanted to be taught by. Gamaliel was on the Sanhedrin, and I don't know at this point in time, he could have still been on the Sanhedrin. He may have still been alive. We don't know. The point is, everyone knew who he was, and that's who Paul uses. See, Paul knew how the system worked. He had it down. He knew the system so well, okay? And he used the system till his will became God's will. Then all of a sudden, he preached Christ. He did. My doctrine is not mine, but his who sent me. See, the leaders attacked Jesus, but Jesus turned the attack around very quickly. He really did, by bringing them back to Moses. You could even say that Jesus was name dropping, right? It's a good name to drop. Verse 19, did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keep the law. Why do you seek to kill me? Why do you seek to kill me? We love laws, don't we? We really do. We like laws of physics. We like laws of thermodynamics, the natural laws, civic laws. We love laws, right? Something happens we don't like, right? We say, You can't do that. That's against the law. We don't even think about it, do we? All right? It's like reactionary. Reactionary. You can't do that. Oh, no, you just disagree with them. And it turns out, guess what? It is legal what they did. It might be dumb. It might be irritating, but it's legal. Yeah. But Moses was a very faithful teacher. He really was. And he passed along the law as God gave him the law, didn't he? That's what he did. And Jesus said the same thing. My doctrine is not mine, but his who sent me, okay? Think about it. Moses was never about his glory, was it? He wasn't. He wasn't. He was actually kind of scared. And that's okay. Being scared is healthy sometimes, folks. Moses always ran to God. When the people were being less than optimal, he ran to God. God, what do I do? What do I do about these people? The issue is not about with the law or with Moses, but with those not keeping the law. This is what Jesus is getting at. God gave the law as a standard of holiness. The law, at the same time, shows that we could never meet the standards on our own. Our sin nature was and is the issue. We have a sin nature. We just do. That's why Jesus had to come. He came to fulfill the righteous requirements of the law on our behalf, then take the punishment for our violations of the law. But a couple of aspects regarding these religious leaders potentially breaking the law, okay? First, these leaders desired to murder Jesus. That is breaking the sixth commandment. Thou shalt not murder. That's what it says. That's what it means. That's what it's about. Remember, this is why Jesus didn't want to go to this feast in the first place. They knew they were out to kill him. Wanting to take someone's life is a serious matter. It really is. They were waiting for Jesus to show up. The thoughts and intents of our heart are a serious matter. The thoughts and intents of our hearts. Because our sin nature is revealed by it. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. Okay, that sounds good. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother without cause shall be in danger of judgment. Wow, that's a whole nother level of uncovering about what judgment's going to be about. Just being angry with your brother without cause. Anger in my heart against you for no reason, that puts me in a very, very precarious place. See, the intents of our hearts matter with respect to the law. Murder's premeditated. It's thought out. It's repeated through a perpetrator's mind, right? They desired and purposed in their hearts to have Jesus dead. That's what they were doing. Because as you read through the text, you see no deliberation or thoughtful assessment of what Jesus has said or any of his actions. They agreed to disagree violently with Jesus. That's what they did. They were going to take his life. And understand this, if Jesus was a false prophet, according to the law, they could take his life. That's really harsh, isn't it? The law could be really harsh. Ooh, look out. That was there. But what if? What if Jesus is who he says he is? Right? Didn't he heal that infirm man at the pool of Bethsaida? He'd been there 38 years, okay? Understand, that was never disputed. Read it. You'll see no dispute. No one disputed he healed him. But it was done on the Sabbath, okay? Think about the people at the festival of the tabernacle. A lot of them were from Galilee, right? They traveled down. Didn't those same people just maybe a week, at most 10 days earlier, didn't Jesus feed 5,000 people up there from bread? Okay? He created something from nothing. They fed them. They participated in a miracle. They were part of it. It's crazy. Shouldn't one pause for a moment and contemplate even a position that's seemingly opposite of yours? Do we ever do that? Do we contemplate someone that is opposite of mine? Do we? Can we do that? Can we listen to the other side sometimes? You know, maybe they're not as far away from us as we think they are. You know, a lot of times people seem like they're against you or doing something, And a lot of times they're just upset. Turns out they're broken. And they've not been healed. That's where they're at. That's where they're at. One would think that as these events and signs happened, that the possibility that God was involved in this would have been considered. Don't you think? Don't you think it might have been? Of course, the same question is presented today. If Jesus is Messiah, why doesn't a person worship them? What is your alternative if Jesus isn't Messiah? It's myself. I have to worship myself. I have to put my soul in care of myself. And I'm very finite. I don't know about you, but I am. See, the thing of it is, all the worship systems where they fall down because all their saviors are still in the tomb. We're going to celebrate Easter. It's a celebration of Christ overcoming death, raised from the dead. That's what Jesus is all about, that possibility. And when Jesus arrived on the scene, it really seemed obvious to some who he was. It was so easy for some. When he arrived originally, remember? Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." No big deal. Jesus said a few words. It was evident who he was. I mean, he didn't heal anyone at this point. He didn't do any of the... This is Jesus. This is what the law and Moses told us all about. There was no waffling. It was so simple for them there. But unfortunately, they wanted to murder Jesus and missed the purpose of the law entirely. The law was supposed to change our hearts, okay? The law is supposed to change our hearts. We're to see what's wrong and do right. Isn't that, if you have children, that's what you do. Honey, don't do that, do this, right? I mean, and maybe you say that with a real loud voice sometimes. Bring it down, get in control, don't yell at them. I know you want to. It's hard. It's hard. They'll bring you to the edge sometimes. But it's supposed to change our hearts. See, it's supposed to make us want to do what's right. But they made the law a checklist of do's and don'ts. Feast of the Tabernacle. I attended, check, right? Another thing to do. Another thing to do. We can do the same thing. Went to church, check. It's easy. It's easy. I've done this stuff, folks. Been there, done that, and I'll do it again, sadly enough. It's mechanical worship, okay? It's like AI, artificial intelligence, except the intelligence has been removed. It's just artificial, right? It's artificial. That's artificial worship. Oh, I showed up. I tuned out, but I showed up. It's what happens. Done it. But then Jesus kind of lowers the boom on these religious leaders regarding this healing at the pool of Bethsaida. Remember, they marveled and they were astonished by Jesus' healing of this man. The question is, were the leaders there, these religious, were they keeping the law or not? Jesus answered and he said to them, "I did one work and you all marveled." This is cool. You healed someone. They all marveled, right? Moses therefore gave you circumcision, not that it was from Moses, but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a man completely well on the Sabbath? Whew. Talk about extremes, right? Jesus told that man in chapter 5 that had been infirm for 38 years. What did he tell him? Pick up your bedroll and walk. That's all he did. Pick up your bedroll and walk. That doesn't sound too bad to me. 38 years of being infirmed. They are upset for Jesus doing a good work. Healing a broken person, a broken soul on the Sabbath, on a day of rest. Because we're all souls, folks. We're all souls, and we're broken. What maybe did they miss? Did any of Jesus' detractors ever think that the lack of rest that that man with that infirmity had on every Sabbath for 38 years, did they ever think about that? That would have been 1,976 Sabbaths with no rest, no peace. Think about it from that perspective. Did he have, it was a day of rest. He healed him. He broke that cycle. Because if Jesus didn't heal him, it would have been 1,977, right? If he didn't do it. And it would have went on. That's how many Sabbaths that man did not have. Did you ever think of it that way? Think of his condition? I think we need to look at things from another person's perspective so much of the time. I don't think they were looking at from the perspective of this man at the pool. I don't think they ever really even saw him. He was there 38 years. 38 years he was there. So what's Jesus say? It's okay to circumcise a baby boy on the Sabbath. If after 8 days of birth, it's okay. Circumcise him. Not a big deal. The Sabbath was about not doing work. Don't plow the fields. Don't go fishing on the Sea of Galilee. Don't sell your wares. Don't build a house. Rest. Rest is important. Have a time of rest. That's what he was doing. That's what he was talking about. But back in Genesis, we know where it starts with Sabbath, with the circumcision in Genesis. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as the Lord commanded him. I want you to consider this for a moment. That was an open-ended commandment. It really was. And here's why. Because of what we know that they didn't know. 8 days. Physiologically, we know now, physiologically, that's when the clotting factors in the human body is such a point that after 8 days, you don't bleed to death. You don't have enough vitamin K. You need the vitamin K. You get enough of it, you clot. What were these people doing? They were just simply doing exactly what God instructed. Circumcise them on the 8th day. The 8th day. Isn't that amazing? Think about what they were doing. Because we use a whole lot of science to figure that out. It's really cool. It really is. I find that stuff fascinating when you see it in there. But they just followed God's instructions. Wait 8 days. They could have waited one more. That sounds funny, right? But they could have waited one more. 8 was a minimum physiologically. It really was. Isn't it funny how we interpret things sometimes? We choose to. Some things are a must, and some things are a maybe. We have to do it on the Sabbath. You have to do it on the Sabbath. Forgetting the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. We miss this. Jesus' intent on healing on the Sabbath or doing any actions on the Sabbath, because he did many, right? He did. It had nothing to do with exposing a harsh or impractical law. That's not what it was about at all. He was not an opponent of this law. Jesus was accomplishing the redemptive purpose of the law that points to God. That's what he was doing on this day of rest. This healing on the Sabbath was about mercy for this man. It was about mercy. That's what it was all about. Are you angry with me because I made a man completely well on the Sabbath? Wow. Think about that for a minute. You're angry with me for doing that? You're angry with really? Okay. That's a hard thing to do. They were at the sea. They were at some pool, some body of water. This is where this healing supposedly took place, right? Where the healing took place. And this is where people came to be healed, and angels are going to come down and touch the water. I've yet to find any evidence that anyone was ever healed at this pool other than the man that we talk about. If you know something in the Bible that I've missed, please bring it to me. I mean that sincerely, because I don't find it. I think it was a wives' tale. That's what it's about, except what Jesus did. See, Jesus' argument was from the lesser to the greater. It really was. In John 12:37, he says, "But although he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe." No matter what he did, they didn't believe. I mean, what do you do sometimes? What are you going to do? Am I supposed to convince you? Right? The signs are performed to open people's eyes and, more importantly, the hearts of humanity. That's why it was being done. Okay? Jew and Gentile, doesn't make any difference. And many hearts were open. It always sounds so negative, like everyone just hated him. No. Many believed. Many believed. Remember, someone said they thought he was good when he was coming, right? But seeing signs and rejecting signs is a sign of a heart of stone. Think about that for a minute. This man was healed. His heart of stone. It's a self-centered, illogical, and self-destructive worldview. The rejection of the signs revealed a contempt for God. It really does. Can we not see that mercy displayed in this healing, the healing of this man? How can mercy be deemed a sin? How could mercy be deemed a sin? To be made completely well to be made completely well is have the relationship restored that's been broken between God and humanity, between God and you, and God and you, and God and you, and God and you. It's between us and God, folks. It's very personal. It's between God and you, each and every one of us individually. That's why he came. That's why he came. Jesus came to the Feast of the Tabernacle. It was a remembrance of God's people adrift in the wilderness, right? They were in the wilderness. That's what the tabernacle was all about. They made their booths, a place to stay to was temporary. God's provision for them while they were in the promised land, because there was no other way they would survive. God was showing them great mercy. Great mercy. When Jesus went to the pool of Bethsaida, he saw a man broken and healed him. When he went to the Feast of the Tabernacle, he saw the people. How do we see each other? Do we see each other? Because Jesus saw them. How do we see each other? I want to suggest this to you. Because our hearts can be like the religious leaders' hearts. We need to take care. We need to be careful. You know what we can think sometimes? We can think that we're battling that army of sin that's invading our church or something in my life. I'm going to battle it. That's what we'll do, right? But people, locations, and situations are not the situation, nor do they cause me to sin. You don't cause me to sin. None of you have ever caused me to sin. Oh, you might have aggravated me. I guarantee I've aggravated some of you. But that's beside the point, okay? You don't cause me to sin. It's not how it works, okay? People, locations, and situations is where the sins of my heart are revealed. You ever think about that? You see my sins revealed at times. Like the situation of these people at the Feast of the Tabernacle. Healing someone on the Sabbath was not a sin. After all, who else can heal but God? Let's get down to who else could do this but God? Sometimes you got to clear away a lot of the stuff and say the reality of all this, don't we? Sin is the broken state of humanity. Sin is the separation that exists between us and God. Sin separates marriages that wind up in divorce. Sin separates friendships that result in lifelong estrangements, not friendships. Sin does that. It does. See, sin is a breaker and it's a taker. That's what sin does. Jesus making this man well on the Sabbath didn't align well with the narrative in the hearts of the leaders, no? Because there was no thought for the brokenness of this man. None. This lack of thought is a heart issue, folks. It's always a heart issue. One we all struggle with. Seeing others' brokenness. We point elsewhere so often. We sort of deflect at where things are going to. And we deflect what brokenness is. Case in point. Ask a father who's so angry all the time. He won't tell you that I have a selfish and impatient heart. Right? No. He'll say, my kids are making me crazy. He points elsewhere. It's not about me. It's about the kids. Ask an old man why he's so mean. He won't tell you that his heart was captured by bitterness. He won't. He'll tell you about all the times in his life he didn't get the things that he deserved. That's what he'll tell you about. He'll point elsewhere. Ask a little boy why he hit his sister. You know what he'll say? Because she bothered me. He won't say because there was sin in his heart. He won't be willing to take the responsibility. Instead, he'll point to her, right? Our brokenness. That's sin. We're broken on many levels, folks. We really are. It feels good to think that our biggest problems exist outside of us and not inside of us. Well, it's outside of me. It's not my problem, it's theirs. That's a street level sort of comfort that we have. It is. Jesus came to heal the brokenness and restore the relationship that God wants us to have with him. Our biggest problems in life do not exist outside of us, but inside of us. That's where our biggest problems exist. The evil outside of me and the evil inside of me connects with the evil that's outside of me so well, so easily. We have to confess that we are our biggest problem. we need to come to the reality that we are broken. The man at the pool was broken. He needed Jesus. The outward healing of that man at the pool revealed the inward brokenness that even well-intentioned people had, right? I mean, the religious leaders, they didn't mean to be ill-intentioned, but they were. They were missing it altogether. Only God can heal. When I confess I'm the problem, I don't need much to be rescued from people, from locations, situations that I'm in. You see, they're not the problem. They never are. The Sabbath isn't the problem. We're in desperate need of grace that alone can rescue me from me. Okay? Rescue me from me. Jesus made this man physically whole. Jesus confronted his detractors during the Feast of the Tabernacle. The remembrance of God's people adrift in the wilderness, completely dependent on God. They were all dependent on God. The signs, the miracles, and wonders, that's not why Jesus came, folks. That is not. They validated who Jesus was, Messiah. I just want you to think about today. If you are broken today, note I put an if in there. I'm being kind. Right? Come on. We need to knock it off. We have a lot of brokenness in us. What are we doing about that brokenness? Are we keeping it in here? Are we confessing it? Are we getting rid of the brokenness that's in there? Confessing one to another. Confessing to God. Getting rid of the brokenness, being healed. Today, I'd just like you to consider that. Because Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this day, Father. I thank you for your goodness to us, Lord. I thank you for this example of this broken man. He's so broken, Lord. He's so broken. Yet you healed him. Physically and spiritually, Lord. Father, today, if there's anyone who doesn't know you, Lord, or they're broken, I pray that we can meet, we can pray, and we can get to the root of the matter. I thank you, Lord, for this day. Amen. Wow, these people just show up here, these singers. It's amazing, isn't it? Well, I'm glad that you're here today. If you have challenges in your life, we all do. We just need to be with one another and care for one another. That's what is important. We need to see each other's brokenness, folks. It's so important. Things that are going on this week, well, you know, Chantila's going to ask you to take a little video clip of you. That's all good, all right? Tell her about my church is. You can get a couple of takes. Don't worry. There's a lot of space on these here phones. But next couple of weeks, we got a few things happening. We have, Palm Sunday next week and then Easter. You know, people sometimes think that, you know, we have to have a big, giant event to get for Easter. And I don't go crazy, if you haven't noticed. I don't. I mean, we're going to do a breakfast, but it's, you know, we need to be with God every single day, okay? We just do, and I want to encourage you in that so much. We need to deal with our brokenness every single day. But having said that, what I'm going to do is pull this pulpit back. I'm going to take these baskets. It's going to float to the back. You can put your offering in, okay? And we're going to sing a song, and we're going to skedaddle, okay? Amen. Please stand.
Trembles at his voice, and trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how